All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Rice Report in our conversation series. These are so much fun, by the way. I hope you're enjoying them as much as I am. Lives are tedious. I'm just running out of time doing it, building a business right now. Today, we are joined by Matt McDonough, and he comes to us from New York City. So welcome from New York, Matt.
Great to be here, Eric. Good talking.
It's a strange place these days, no?
It's a strange place all the time, but it's getting much stranger post-COVID, I would say.
So Matt's background is so pertinent for the times that we live in right now. He's working in the AI space. He's dealt in Bitcoin for years, VC, Wall Street, the whole nine yards. He's a Wall Street defector, like many of us are.
Yes,
who are getting into. Yeah, you saw the writing on the wall very early. Yeah. So walk us through your journey. Like how did this all begin when you started to see? I want to keep this very paced too. I want to talk about AI and somebody from the inside. I want to prepare the world for what's coming. And I want some tips on how they can, start learning AI so they don't lose out on this venue. Then we're going to get into digital currencies and all that good stuff. So give us your background.
Yeah, perfect. So I went to school in New York City at Fordham, and I started in investment banking. And it's an interesting function. You're chopping companies up. You're really more of a capillary, moving risk around, but you're not so much creating. And so I almost immediately set my sights elsewhere when I got into investment banking. And I had an idea to launch a hedge fund that would mechanically read basically machine read financial statements and then come up with synopsis and then give you using natural language processing, sort of a breakdown of what did this entire financial statement say in 300 words. So it was a way to kind of boil the ocean and read things faster. So I left the investment bank and I launched something called Throne Capital. And that was that mechanically traded long short equity value fund. And so that's when I first saw the power of machine learning up close. Excel just couldn't cut it. It couldn't digest this much information. There's something called the V's in data engineering: volume and velocity and variety. The higher the cardinality of the data, the more complex things get. And so anyway, long story short, I had to learn. And so I started learning Python. I'm self-taught. And eventually I went to Michigan at night to get better, the School of Information, to get better at it. But really, I just saw the power of AI. I saw the power of machine learning coming, and I realized I want to move to a function away from risk transfer into value creation. And so that's what moved me out of banking and into alternative investments. And then, candidly, the fund didn't do very well. We ended up closing because we didn't raise enough capital. We had like 38 million under management. You need closer to 150 million to pay all your fees and prime broker and all that jazz. But when we wound the fund down, a lot of the initial seed investors said, you've got a good eye, you're forward looking, keep an eye on technology companies, opportunities, let us know what's going on. And so I invested in some technology companies, and candidly, the first 3 went to zero. So that's off to a great start.
Welcome to the club.
Yes. Some tax write-offs and a lot of lessons. I learned a lot about due diligence and things like that. But then the fourth one was an identity verification company that we sold to Facebook in 2017. So we had some success. And then at that point, a lot of the family offices that I'd reached out to try to put together Throne Capital, were like, okay, you've had a win now. What are you doing next? And so that's when I built something called Rev Systems. Basically, I learned a lot going through, I'm doing a little speed run, but I learned a lot going through the wreckage of the planes for the first 3 companies that went to zero. And it turns out in the CRMs of most of these companies, there were indications, most of these are B2B, there were indications that pipeline was slowing down, velocity of conversations were going, not in the right direction. And so I built Rev Systems to machine read. There's that same idea, but as opposed to machine reading the entire stock market, it was machine reading transaction logs, basically telemetry from the CRM and the marketing engagement tools, and then giving the executives summaries of what's happening on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis.
I'm gonna pause you there. Yeah. So for those of you who are not following along with Matt, because he's a technologist also, this process of being able to translate CRM data to the higher ups in a company usually would be about 4 or 5 people within an organization that would have multiple meetings about analytics and what the numbers mean and debates and arguments. And AI has simplified that for the higher ups to make decisions.
And framing, let's be honest, positioning, right? It's marketing saying the pipeline was great, you guys couldn't convert. And it's sales saying, no, the pipeline was filled with duds. And then it's CS saying, why are you selling people that are making it more difficult for me to retain? So there's this constant 3-way tension in most accrued retained revenue businesses, subscription revenue businesses. And so it's nice to have an impartial judge that's just looking at the telemetry, then giving you synopsis. And when I first started in 2022, we had GPT, but it wasn't what we have now. So I was still using, yes, I was still using natural language processing, which is a predecessor of it. It can read, but not to the extent that GPT-4 can these days. But it's incredible, the amount of leverage that we're getting. And I think that that's ultimately one of the big words that AI should put into your head is leverage, right? It's an incredible tool that you could use to learn, and you could also use to not just learn things, but then create things and then distribute them too. So it really participates in all phases of the game.
And I think that's a great place to educate, right? Because I'm one of them. 5 years ago, I was like, I saw the Terminator. I've actually spoken with Sophia Stewart, who wrote it. This is coming. We're all destroyed. But in the reality of the world, there are going to be AI. And the important thing to AI is to understand the difference between centralized, decentralized, and open source. Like, these are important. If you're not studying decentralization and open source, AI is an enemy if that's not being held accountable. Yes. But in AI, it's an amplifier for human aptitude and an amplifier for the ability for humans to be more productive. So a lot of people out there are thinking AI is just going to take over our jobs. I'm not going to lie to you. It may, like, some of your jobs may be completely replaced. Matt already did it, 7 or 8 years ago in analytics. But that doesn't mean that those jobs are gone. They're amplified. It's the speed of productivity, which actually increases the ability for an economy to grow. So I want to make that very clear to people that AI is scary until you learn about it. And it's scary unless you understand decentralization. So if the government has control of AI, you're doomed. That's a historical fact from thousands of years of understanding governments. So keep going, because I think it's important for people to continually talk about open source, decentralized AI.
Yeah, well, back to Terminator for one quick second, right? In that universe, there are Cyberdyne Systems, which is the company that birthed what ended up being Skynet. Well, Cyberdyne Systems was an incredibly centralized database, the world's knowledge in one single place. And some virtual bad guy spawned inside of Cyberdyne Systems, and then that became the kernel that was Skynet. The good thing about decentralization, we are moving away, I think, from centralization. Now, one, AI itself is going to be a force for that. You used to have 30,000 people companies in order to integrate and go global and have logistics chains that are managed and everything. Now companies can get much more nimble. And while some people might hear that and say, well, if you go from 30,000 people companies to 500 person companies, doesn't that mean that there's going to be job destruction? But it's actually the opposite. So many additional industries are created and new surface area is created inside of those industries that really what's going to happen is monotonous work that we were wasting our hours doing is going to get pushed away. Like, there used to be couriers who push paper up and down New York City all the time, and there still are, but there used to be a lot more. Well, now we send emails, and no one is lamenting the death of the courier industry. There is still some very valuable courier work to be done, but the reality is the economic gain from emails is so much greater than the loss in the courier GDP. So we were happy to make that trade. And this is another one I've given before in other conversations, but I think it really illustrates, right? If you were a buggy whip manufacturer and you described the car to someone who made buggy whips, they'd be terrified, right? Because there goes horses, there goes, well, guess what? Once you see the inside of a car and you see all that surface area for beautiful leather, you realize as a leather goods person, oh, I'm okay with trading in buggy whips for vehicles, right? It's a higher value activity. I can make more dollars per hour, and I've got more hours worth of work to do because there's a lot more cars being produced than people who want new buggy whips.
And life can go further, faster. Right. That's one of the big things. So one thing that I had to change my paradigm. I've changed my mind so much in the last 5 years. Like, the more you learn about things, the more smart people change their mind. You see things, you see new information. AI is the amplifier for time. Like, that's the one thing people aren't seeing, is that right now we're all debt slaves on a farm right now, being farmed for taxes, spending our time having monotonous meetings with people about stupid things. And if AI was implemented properly, decentralized, you'd have this database that just saves you so much time. I believe, I've changed my mind on this in the last 2 years. I think we're going to have stronger families, better parents, and a better society when parents don't have to spend all day doing monotonous, tedious work that's done by a computer. Like, that's the beauty of the future. And that's from a guy who hated AI 3 years ago, hated it, absolutely thought it was the death of the world. Skynet, we're doomed.
Yeah.
But AI opens doors that humanity has not had opened before. And that's what we need to start embracing. And that comes with education. So how can people get to where you are in the comfort level of AI? Like, what got you? I mean, technology, you understand better than almost anyone listening to this. but how do you get comfortable with it from like a spiritual perspective or a human perspective?
Well, experience is a great guide. So ChatGPT and these other folks, they're trying to build their funnels. So they usually let you interact with a cheap product or a free product. So I think the first thing you should do is just have conversations and back and forth. Like I started by asking for tips on how to leverage AI. Like, hey, what should I do? What should I do with you? And it would talk back. And then I ended up launching a Substack called Life in the Singularity, I think 2 years ago now, because I saw how fast we were climbing up the curve. Ray Kurzweil of Google fame, and before Google, he came up with optical character recognition and lots of other things. He's absolutely brilliant. He observed that there's like a dance going on between science and technology. And the idea is basically with every scientific breakthrough, we're able to build ever more precise microscopes and telescopes and tools. So our technology is getting better. And then with better technologies, we're able to make better scientific breakthroughs. And so you can see how those are self-reinforcing loops, right? Science and technology dancing faster and faster. And so he thought that those two forces would catapult us into the singularity at some point. Like, I think originally he was saying 2040. Now he's pushing forward to 2029. Anytime the experts are moving their goalposts forward, that tells you a lot. And into this decade also, like, not like 2035. So anyway,
this is a great place to singularity, right?
Yeah.
So singularity, there are two parts of the world. There are those who hear the word we're working towards singularity, and they're like, that's amazing. Yeah. And there's other parts of the world that say singularity, that's the beast system. We're dominated by computers. Explain what the singularity is out there for the layperson.
Yeah, so when you're approaching a black hole, and a black hole is just an infinitely dense orbital mass. It's basically a star that's collapsed in on itself because it got too big for its britches. And there's all sorts of reasons that these things get born. And there's even some kinds that move. Black holes are actually really fascinating. But anyway, they have an event horizon. And basically what happens is as you approach the black hole, you get to a point where you're so close to it that you will no longer be able to escape its pull, right? It doesn't matter how much energy you start to exert in exactly the opposite vector to try to escape the black hole, you're pretty much trapped inside of it. That's called the event horizon. And then you're getting pulled towards something called the singularity. And the singularity is a place of absolute novelty, where just nothing is new ever. And for 1 second, everything is new, nothing is the same. Everything is rotating constantly. So it's basically just constant reinvention. And it's very difficult for us to imagine because humanity has societal structures that we architect and agree to together, but we erect. And then once they're up, they have inertia, and then we're unwilling to take them down. Some people don't want to take them down. So, singularity can be an interesting place for people once we fully are inside of it, because I think a lot of these old legacy structures are going to have a hard time withstanding the constant rate of change, because they're going to be positive changes. Like people aren't going to leave the old way. They aren't going to leave the Apple phone to get the Zorp phone because they've started hating Apple. It's because the Zorp phone is so incredibly better than the Apple phone that you are actually silly to not leverage it. So anyway, the singularity is basically the point where the story gets really good from my perspective. And I think that we're getting very, very, very close to it now, because essentially AI is now accelerating that dance, to go back to what Ray was talking about between engineering and science and technology. I think AI is essentially a third dance partner that's accelerating both science's pace of progress and technology's pace of progress. And that is leading to, novelty.
Right. And there's guys like Jack Kruse that are talking about decentralizing medicine. I'm going to reiterate this a million times. If AI is centralized, it's bad. If AI is decentralized and open source and everyone can see and contribute to it, it's actually a very strong benefit to humanity.
Well, Bitcoin, I know we're going to get there later, but there's a concept called not your keys, not your coins. Well, in AI, there's a concept like not your weights, not your AI. So essentially, AIs are just doing matrix multiplication and kind of figuring out. There's an old joke that they're next word predictors or next token predictors, but there is some truth to that. They are kind of like stochastic, really, really, really smart, but stochastic parrots. Anyway, if you don't know the weights of the model, then you don't know who has manipulated it to say what. So if you change the weights very discreetly, just like how if you change Google's algorithm very discreetly, you can serve an ephemeral experience to voters and really change their understanding of the world just before an election. Similarly, if you don't control the weights, you can change them, and then you can make the AI say things that are not quite matching up with reality.
I actually haven't heard that phrase. That's actually really good. Yes. If you don't understand, when he's talking about weights, he's talking about weighted averages. So these are response times coming from the AI system. Is it weighted liberal? Is it weighted conservative? Is it weighted atheist? Is it weighted Christian? And the thing that we need to focus on is understanding that weight system so that it becomes a fair system. And a fair AI system is exactly what humanity needs to get out of the 9-to-5 grind. I mean, that really is what we need. But AI by itself is a fascinating topic because it's been around for 35 years. I remember I used to go up to the Perimeter Institute in Canada. If you've never, it's like the home of some of the best theoretical physicists in the world. They come from all over the world. And I would go to this place called the Tannery in Canada. And in Canada, this place is 350,000 square foot old tannery factory. I went up there 12 years ago, and I recruited developers from up there, the University of Waterloo. Great developers up there.
Yes.
And these guys, that's
a great nerd farm, Waterloo.
Total nerd farm. And God bless you all if you're up there. There's some amazing people too. But they didn't have an American set of business. So they brought a lot of us up there to help them make businesses. The first time I walked in, I went to Perimeter, which is like, if you think Waterloo is nerdy, Perimeter Institute are like the autists. Like they are nice. Beyond nerdy, and they're genius. I don't think I'm allowed back because I played a prank there because it was just so stuffy. I had to like make everyone laugh. I don't know if I'm allowed back. But when I went to the tannery, I got a cup of coffee from a robot 12 years ago. I walked in, this little robot rolled in, asked me what type of, I don't drink coffee. He's like, would you like a coffee? I was, what the hell is this? And I looked over and I said, I don't drink coffee. He's like, would you like a glass of water? And I said, well, give me a cup of coffee with cream. I'm not going to drink it. 5 minutes later, it rolled in with a cup of coffee and cream. Wow. That was 12 years ago. That is absolute voice recognized AI in beta format. Yep. So we are at that point. So robotics is another topic that leads into AI, because AI is the system that allows robotics to operate independent of human control. Totally. We hear this rhetoric, and it is rhetoric. Like, I love Donald Trump, but it's rhetoric of bringing factory jobs back to America. Those factory jobs are going to be supervisory jobs for robots to build things. Right. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for us? Because I love hearing other people's opinion. I have my own. I'll share it after you. But is that a good thing or bad thing? More robotics manufacturing in America?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to feed through to the cost of the goods and the services that we consume. So ultimately, it really will be good for us. There will be some job destruction. There's no doubt about it. Like, there's going to be fewer longshoremen because there's going to be automation at the ports. There's going to be automation in fabrication facilities. But to your point, there's going to be humans overseeing the facilities. Those are higher paying jobs, by the way. So I think the average work hour at each of these facilities just went up. Maybe definitely the number of available hours went down, but the average hour went up. And then the feed, as I explained earlier, there's economics that will feed through and make the input costs and things lower for the goods and services, which will be good. But then more importantly, there's going to be a cognitive blossoming. There's so many people who are in these jobs because, you know, they were 16, 17, they started working at the lumberyard, they started working at the port, and then they didn't find a good opportunity. And next thing you know, they're 38 or they're 45 and they've been working there their entire life. And it's like, if there was an opportunity, a cognitive off-ramp where they could learn a little bit about themselves, have a conversation, understand maybe what areas they're interested in, and then develop a highly personalized learning plan. I mean, that's one of the things that I really took away from AI that shocked me is I thought there was going to be a pushback because people weren't going to want to learn from an automated device. They would prefer to learn from humans. But AI, I've never once had the AI say, that's a dumb question. I've never once had the AI say, how could you think that? You know, and it will usually, and I put some wonky stuff in there, it will usually walk me across a logical bridge to get me back to where I should be. And it'll do it in a way that's friendly. And I think that in the future, we're going to be able to upload essentially your learning profile, like, you know, maybe small indications of what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then maybe even use multimodal so it can see your face and basically determine how well you're actually learning the material that's being presented in front of you. Because there were times even in school, I would fake it on math. I'm very verbal, but I wasn't great at math. And I would just kind of like, yeah, I get it. And then I wouldn't get it. And I'd go home and, you know, be frustrated with my parents trying to catch up. The AI would see microfacials in ways that my teacher wouldn't get. Also, my teacher probably knew I didn't get it and didn't care and was just like, fine. He said he doesn't get it. You know, AI is going to say score below 60% confidence that this student knows this information. Suggest we continue teaching. You know, it's just, it won't be a choice. It'll just be automatic. So long story short, I know I kind of walked around there, but
no, you're good.
I think that the people who are displaced are going to have better tools to figure out what they want to do next. And when they step into the work world again, they're going to be doing so at higher hourly rates. doing work they want.
Well, three key takeaways from what you just said. Number one, less hours, more money.
Yeah.
Right. That really kind of solves the problem. So yes, there will be jobs that are erased, but they'll transition. The other thing about AI, like you mentioned before, it used to take 300 or 30,000 people to conduct business. You can do it with 500. That means more opportunities for you to own your own business and not be working for someone. Correct. Because you'll have that advantage. I've been an entrepreneur a long time, and I just used AI to write 3 contracts this past week. It cost me 0 money, and it took 12.5 seconds to produce a contract that would have cost me $5,000 and 2 weeks from an attorney in the past. So a lot, and that of course will go on the blockchain, smart contracts in the future. But I think that's a huge thing. The other thing is, AI in school. We keep hearing this a lot, and I'm somewhere in between. Like everything's going to be fine, and I need a bunker and a bunch of food. Like I'm somewhere in the middle of that. And I think we probably all are. And I'm prepared for that, by the way. And everyone should be prepared for bad things to happen all the time in their life, because it's humanity, and humanity turns sideways quite often throughout history. But I think the future looks bright there. AI in school, that this is, again, where open source decentralized becomes important. Imagine if systems actually if they knew real history. We're going to do another podcast. We don't have time today. You and I are going to talk history on another podcast. But if they knew the real history, and it was embedded into a system that would teach children real history, now you actually have a learning system. So I'll say this, I'm 1 foot in the AI advocacy pond. I'm building off-grid energy to support it, because I want anybody using my system has to be a part of a decentralized network, or they won't get the energy. That's how we have to do this, guys, by the way. Totally. And as part of this, we have to be able to understand and not just be scared of things. Humanity was scared of fire, I'm sure, when somebody harnessed fire, right? It was terrifying. That guy can make fire, and he conquered everything because he had fire. Swords, every new weapon that actually, sword is a bad example. The computer, the cell phone. Yeah. So all these things, nothing is going to stop this, by the way. There's absolutely nothing that will stop AI from rolling out. It is already ready. In the next 18 months is going to be an onslaught of this. So this is a great episode. So before we get into the financial markets for the last 18 minutes, give my listeners out there like 2 or 3 tips, like 2 or 3 things that they can do every day to get more informed on AI and more adept at using it.
Yeah. So my first tip would be become a daily user. You can start the day by just saying, hey, I'm planning on doing X, Y, and Z. Can you give me a plan to go through my day? And it will quickly give you a nice little implementation plan. So be a daily user, use it for light journaling, planning, and investigating, like learning new things. So I like Python, but there's so much surface area of Python. There's so much stuff that you can learn. And I'm always learning about new libraries. I used to have to dig deep into libraries, go through GitHubs, find Slacks and Discord channels where the real wizards of this particular library lived, and go ask them questions. Now it's all inside the corpus of AI. So my first tip is just be a daily user and a practicer. The other thing I would do is try to read content related to AI. You don't have to subscribe to like Machine Learning Monthly and all sorts of like nerdy things like this. You can go on x.com and other places where there's communities of people who are practitioners. And the good thing is it doesn't take very long in these social networks to find the people who have the most to offer, because typically they have the larger followings and they have the more engagement. Side note, just because you see a large following online does not mean this is a quality account. It means potentially they've been around for a long time, or they're very good at accruing followers. And there's all sorts of tactics, including just outright buying them. What I like to do is look at how large their audience is versus how much engagement they have. It's a little bit of head math, but if you've got 100,000, followers, roughly 1.5% of people on X who follow you will see your card when you press send. So if you've got 100,000 followers, right, you've got 1,500 out there. If I'm not seeing 150 likes on that, you've got less than 10% engagement. You have potentially a non-organic audience. So just a little side note, when you're out there, don't just look at the size of the audience, because they know
shadow ban.
They know
one of those 2 things.
Yeah, they know people do that. So of course you want to send a signal. You just buy followers and look bigger than you really are.
Yeah. And small accounts are great to follow too, because a lot of those, like I don't have much. I post like 3 things a day. I share everything on Twitter, but there's small accounts out there. You kind of research the person or the company they work for, and you look for educational people, not propagandists, not people telling you this is the greatest. People who are educating. That's very important in this space.
True.
Any other tips?
No, I think that's it. Just use it and read it, and that's it.
I will say this, stay away from getting personal with AI, because there's a meme out there, a picture of John Connor, and it says, what would John Connor think if he knew that you were having a relationship with AI? And it just kind of rings true. So keep it at like things I use AI every day for things I like. Oh, I heard this. What does that mean? Or on that date, what happened? It's such a resource to be able to amplify your learning. It's such an incredible way to accelerate your understanding of the world around you. You hear a term you don't understand, don't go to the dictionary, go to AI. It gives you a breakdown with sources. Keep it high level. I'm going to try using it to plan my day, because I need someone to do that. To be
yes,
frank.
absolutely. And one other tip, you can also use it. I like analogies. They help me understand what I'm reading, especially because I read high level stuff that, frankly, are written by people who are much smarter than me and they're domain experts. So bringing it down to size and understanding it's really useful. And so when I'm reading research papers, I will feed either the entire paper or the snippet that's got me a little stumped. And I'll say, can you come up with 3 analogies to help me understand this? Now, that's important for 2 reasons. One, analogies are literally devices that help us understand things. So if you're going to try to understand things, ask for analogies. But 2, go ahead, ask for 3, ask for 5. The AI is not going to say, no, man, that's too much work. It's going to go ahead and think and give you an output. A real person probably wouldn't do you any better than just a single analogy, and then they'd look at you like, you got it. And then if you didn't get it, then that'd probably be the end of the conversation. So yeah, good advice.
Yeah, no, I got it. I don't get it. That's where everyone goes.
Yes.
That's a great way to do it. Yeah, make this understandable is one thing I use all the time. The other thing I use all the time is yes or no. Right. So I'll put in something. Is this something or something? Yes or no. Because AI will like to elongate, and it will reason, and it has been, especially like Grok. Grok is fed by Twitter. So Grok is actually being fed misinformation to be able to disseminate misinformation to you that's fed by the user. It's a common tactic that shills use these days, where they overwhelm Grok with terms or opinions, and Grok reads so many of them repetitively that it regurgitates it as a fact. So yes or no is very important in there too. Well, let's move on. AI is great. I love this conversation. I think it's helpful, but we got 15 minutes, and let's get into finances. So your background, you're coming from the PE side of things, breaking apart companies, selling them. PE, by the way, PE, I've had a lot of people on here about PE. I'm in PE. There are good PE groups that launch companies too. So it's not just
all vultures. It's true. It's true.
It's true. Most are vultures. I will say that. Yes. But how did you go from that to completely disengaging with Wall Street, and now you're a full-blown Bitcoiner? And there's some people on here who hate Bitcoin. So I'm not going to get in. There's a 101 video you can listen to. If you hate Bitcoin, I don't care. It's your money. You put it where you want to. It's something that many of us believe is the future, not of everything, but it's the future money. Like, there is a money you can use across the world. What got you to Bitcoin?
So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And in 2012, I was in the Princeton Club, and I'm not an alumni of Princeton. I mentioned I went to Fordham, but Fordham and Princeton are sister schools, and somehow we were granted access to the Princeton Club. So I was sitting there, and as you remember, in 2012, I'm in the Matrix learning about Python, getting my fund launched. And so I see a guy across the way, laptop. Everyone else at the Princeton Club is 150 years old, and there's one other person who's like my age. And so I see him I see him programming. I walk over. I'm like, hey, it's Python. What are you looking at? And he's like, oh, it's Bitcoin. And now as a former investment banker, I was moving into the alternate fund space at this point, but I'd heard of Bitcoin. One or two guys had told me no on a deal because they said they wanted to put money in that Bitcoin thing. So I already lost a little bit of money to Bitcoin in my head. And I was like, okay, but let me learn more about it. And he just really high level, didn't get me into didn't talk to me about what's wrong with fiat. He really just talked to me about what's right with Bitcoin. And I think there's two different ways to do it. And frankly, I'm more passionate about the what's wrong with fiat side of the fence because I grew up there. But the what's right with Bitcoin side is cool too. And so he took me through that for about 15 minutes. And yeah, I was hooked. I started watching YouTube videos. There weren't really as many at the time. Now there's lots of great ones, lots of great speeches. But it was enough to get my head around, did this really solve the double spend problem? I was always afraid of spreadsheet industries, meaning an industry that could change based on what was happening inside of a spreadsheet. And this felt like the literal definition of a spreadsheet industry. What if someone came up with a better Bitcoin, code? Right. Then you start to learn about the network. And even at that point, how many nodes were operating and how distributed it was. And you learn about Metcalfe's law. And then suddenly you're like, well, wait a minute, this is a network that's gaining in adoption. It solves a real problem. And this was, 2013 now at this point of the journey. And we hadn't even started interfacing meaningfully with TradFi yet, but it seemed very exciting to me. And then, yeah, there were so many problems on the fiat side of the fence that as a fund manager, I saw people sitting closer to the money printer, gaining access to money. And I'm thinking to myself, one, this isn't fair. Two, what if there was money is a substrate that trust and energy moves around a society. So if the signal from money is being corrupted by lots of printing and shadow banking and financial engineering, if all that's sending fake signals, then us poor participants are being absolutely bamboozled. And what's happening while we're not paying attention to the fake economic signals, right? I mean, I think we both know it's printing, which means devaluation, which means purchasing power erosion. I mean, so yeah, the Bitcoin story was more luck, and then as I got into it, like most hardcore BTCers at this point, at some point the passion takes over and you just go all in.
I was the opposite. So I was just had on a phone call about this earlier today. I had a friend of mine who refuses to let Forbes put him on the 100 list. Oh. And he told me about Bitcoin, and he reminds me, I told you about Bitcoin in November of 2009. So he did, and it was like a penny. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I've told the story a bunch of times. In 2014, I'm at a tech summit, and somebody was going to have a presentation on Bitcoin. They got sick. I was sick at the time. They said, can you do a presentation on Bitcoin? In 2014, I was like, I have 3 days. I've never studied. I studied it for 3 days. And I gave a presentation going, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I don't know why anyone would ever stop using the US dollar. Over the course of the next 10 years, things change quite a bit. And you start to realize just how ugly the fiat system is. And Matt just said those closest to the money printer is not a joke. 9 of the top 15 wealthiest counties in the country surround Washington, D.C. There's no coincidence.
Yeah.
And it's because they just print it. And I think most people watching this know this, but we've got a few minutes left. Go into what you love, and you're brilliant at this on all the X spaces we're on. Give us like 2, and you talk fast, and you've slowed down today, so that's good, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, you're taking oxygen in, which is awesome. Give us like 3 minutes on what's wrong with the fiat system for the normal person out there who knows nothing about it or Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we used to sit around a camp. I'll get to fiat in a second. We used to sit around a campfire, and we used to talk and pass information around each other. And our storage container was the oldest person around the campfire. And then technology improved, and we unlocked the ability to write and to put things down on paper. And then we were able to store information from the tribe and across generations, decades. We were also able to then bootload that into the printing press. And suddenly we have movable type, and now we're taking writing, and the radius of our information is starting to expand. And technologies are moving at faster and faster rates. Then we get, the radio, the internet. The internet's really important because for the first time, it lets information recipients become information writers. And so you can start to collaborate meaningfully. Yeah, we had the telephone, but faxes, sure. But the internet literally lets it be rich enough to be high fidelity and be really useful. So the story of humanity is the story of getting better at moving information from point A to point B, and being better at coordinating. And of course, those two things are related because the better we can move information around. And that's why I was geeking out about how they've ruined the signal of money with printing, because we need signals to coordinate. And so anyway, long story short. So what I love about, so AI is incredible because it's the internet on steroids. Now the information is talking to each other. So I like how technology has been making everything better for the history of humanity, but technology never really got to money. Like we went from shells to paper, and there's coins in the middle, and like we haven't really changed like that much. And money's played different roles in society: a medium of exchange, store of value, unit of account. You could argue it's not a store of value, that the assets are a store of value, but they're denominated in money. So ultimately, like, it all goes back to the value of that underlying fabric of trust. And so when I looked at I got my Wall Street banker hat on. Now I'm launching my hedge fund at the time throne, and I'm basically seeing, folks who have really nice connections to funds and have, the relationships in Geneva, and they've got they know the right people in San Francisco. Suddenly they're getting allocations, and I'm running around shaking my tin cup, and I have to go eventually to family offices, because then I could talk to real people and tell the story of the fund. And but the allocators, the institutional elite Yale crowd, they wouldn't even look at us. And it was because we didn't have proximity to the money printer. We didn't have the right connections. We didn't have the right relationships. In the Bitcoin world, it's not about relationships. It's the value of the Satoshi as it monetizes will go up for all Satoshi holders equally. Like the dollars closest to the money printer, dollars are not worth the same. There's viscosity to it. And so ultimately, the people closest, those 9 counties, not only do they have proximity to the money printer, but they have proximity to the information printer and the exchanges. And they leverage all of those things to create a ridiculous amount of stealth wealth for themselves. And that made me very upset. And I just thought that there needed to be a fairer way for us to store our wealth, and a place that couldn't be printed and debased away. Because, and I'm sure most of the people who are watching this know, but when the Fed got on the scene in 1913, if you just had a dollar of value, and then we got to basically take the value and drain it and visualize it, we're down to about 2 cents of that original dollar now. So, and that, we're in 2025. This whole unwinding started in 1913. And by the way, I think the decade before 1913, we'll do history next time, but the decade before 1913 that led like 1900 to 1910, what an incredible time. They were setting the table
kicked it all off. Yeah, 100%.
And Titanic was absolutely part of the play there as well. Certain people got on that boat and certain people didn't.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that's why I got into Bitcoin and the problems that I see with the fiat world. It's basically a stealth, inflation's fake. It doesn't really need to happen. We don't need to create this much additional units of currency, but they're flooding the zone with money to raise the rates, to rent assets and to raise the value of assets. So asset owners and holders are getting rich, and the purchasing power is being drained from savers and from income owners. So, think about it. If you're some hardworking person and you inherited like 15 grand from your dad, and your dad inherited 5 grand from his dad before him, and his dad inherited $100 from before him, all that economic energy has been traveling through your family. And then in the last 15 years, they've printed 70% of all the money the world has ever seen. And they've just drained the value of that to zero. Like it's a moral hazard doesn't begin to describe it.
Well, and that's the scarcity stuff is an obvious point to it. But one of the things that kept me out is I didn't understand Bitcoin, so I took a long time to understand it. Jumped in head first as soon as I got it. I was playing with all the other stuff too, like everyone else. It's cool. Like I'm not one of those guys like, oh, you can't buy that. I don't care what you buy. Buy what you think is best. The thing that captured me to Bitcoin. Yeah. Eventually, you'll end up coming to Bitcoin after a while, but what I ended up finding was like understanding proof of work, which we'll not get into because we have a few minutes, but I have a whole video on proof of work, and understanding that AI is inevitable. Nothing will stop AI from coming. I don't care how much you complain and whine about it, because I did it for years. It's coming. And understanding that AI is coming and it couldn't crack Bitcoin. Like everyone knows that AI cannot get into Bitcoin. It cannot hack it. That was what got me understanding that there are millions of computers run by normal people like you and I that are managing the system, producing now a zeta hash of hash power, which is every tech company in the world would equal 6% of that. The largest supercomputer ever constructed runs on approximately, and we don't know the exact numbers, but between 15 and 30 gigawatts of energy. That's as much energy as Poland and Spain make. So some people look at this and they say, well, that's too much energy. It's bad for the environment. The environment is a lie. Climate change is a lie. So that's a stupid thing to say. There's also more energy.
Bitcoin is a bounty for energy generation technologies that are efficient, because the miners don't want to waste money on electricity either. So actually, Bitcoin, I think, has done more good than harm for the environment.
Yeah, I just said that the other day. I said, if it wasn't for Bitcoin, AI wouldn't be possible, because AI uses 5 times the amount of energy of any computing unit today. And that's a lowball number. Some people say 30 times the amount of energy. So like I talked to somebody in California about a home miner, and they were like, well, I'm not going to mine at home. It's 42 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm like, we mine Bitcoin in Tennessee for zero, like with tax structure, even just straight up as a penny. Yeah. So Bitcoin miners have learned how to get energy costs down significantly. And we're still getting 15 to 30 gigawatts of power throughout the world. If you think that that's not important, ask Canadian truckers. You cannot censor it. It is not possible. Ask anyone in a foreign nation who's been cut off from banking systems, or people, was that Spain now, cash withdrawals cost $150. Like, it was created for this specific time that we're in. And speaking of time, we're almost out here. We got your hard stop coming. Can't wait for the next episode. Next episode, we're going to get into history, and history will actually involve the history of money, which many people do not understand, because money has been at the center point of history since money was created as seashells. And Matt, it's just been an absolute pleasure tonight. Today. This has been a great interview.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll go over a lot of people's heads, and that's good. I want that to happen, so you can reach out to both of us online, and we can answer questions for you. We can hop on a Twitter space and do this. It's important that the world understands the things that you've been working on for a decade now, and they can use it. So, any last words?
Yeah, nothing to fear from the future. It's a source of opportunity. It's an expanding surface area that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger in front of you. So just keep learning. The most important thing is to have a growth mindset and realize that there's great opportunities in front of you. Just the key is to be smart and to be as connected as you can. Like, try to reach out to people you don't know and build networks, because AI is going to be very good at a lot of the work, but it's not going to be very good at a lot of the networking or bringing work together. It's going to still take people to sort of be the stitch that meshes everything together. So that's what I would leave everyone with.
Great point. It allows humanity to be human again. That's actually the beautiful part about it, if it's done right. So Matt, where can they find you online?
So I'm on X at McDonough Matthew, and lifeinthesingularity.com is my Substack.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, God bless you, brother. God bless this country. And we'll see you again next time on the Bryce Report. Have a good one, everybody.
Appreciate it.